recording on Skype. We're recording on Ecamm. How's your Wi-Fi? You just cut out for a second.
I just said you started recording.
Oh, cool.
I think Wi-Fi is usually good.
Sweet. I think we're good. We're recording right now, so we'll cut out all this in the beginning.
Cool.
Beard looks great. Did you get a trim?
Before the last trip, before Alabama. That was, about a week ago.
Looks good.
Yeah. Looks about the same as yours.
Yeah, right. All right, we'll get into it. 3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Spotlight, a show where we shed some light on amazing people in the baseball community, from coaches, players, entrepreneurs, and anyone in between. I'm your host, Josh Band. I'm the founder of Plate Crate, a monthly box of baseball gear. And our guest today is a super good friend of mine, Cameron Monger, at Cameron Monger on Instagram. Yep. And he has a lot of awesome things for you guys today. Just to give you a little background about Cam, he's from the Dallas area. He was originally drafted by the Padres, and he had a 10-year minor league career. A couple of those years, or I guess one of those years, was spent doing yoga with me to stretch before Fort Worth Cats game. But he was drafted in 2009 by the Padres, and he played for the Padres, Kansas City, Oakland A's, Fort Worth Cats, Brockton Rocks, Worcester Tornadoes, Fort Worth Cats again, Normal Corn Belters, Frontier Grays, Sioux Falls Canaries, Sussex County Miners, Grand Prairie Airhogs, San Rafael Pacifics, and Cleveland Railroaders. I think that's all of them. But he's got a ton of baseball knowledge and mental coaching knowledge. He's a certified mental coach as well, and just all around good person and incredibly nice beard. So, Cam, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Again.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. How'd you like that intro?
That was great.
That was long.
2 breaths.
It was long because you've had such a crazy long career. But there's a million places we could get started. Just to give all the listeners and a little bit of background between me and you. You're on the show for a million different reasons. One is that you're just a good friend of mine. And 2, you're an all-around nice guy. 3, you have some really, really interesting stuff going on Instagram in your life. And 4, you have a million things to teach kids from your awesome career. So I didn't know where to get started, but I thought a good place to start would just be maybe diving in to a little bit about how you got started with baseball, giving some people your background, and then I have some places we can branch out from there.
Yeah, so kind of exciting because I'm getting to revisit a lot of day one of playing as a kid. I started in Arlington Southwest Little League, so as kind of part of my post-career projects, I've got a little hitting facility here in Arlington, which is where I'm at right now. And we just partnered with the Little League that I played with, or actually the 2 Arlington leagues that I didn't play with, and then the third one, we'll see what happens there. But this is actually the first hitting facility I ever came to, and it opened in '98. So I think I came the year or 2 after it started. But really, the only reason why I wanted to play was because my best friend from elementary school was playing, and that was the only time we weren't hanging out. Is we would hang out, we'd go jump across the creek and catch crawdads and just be goofballs, and then he would leave for practice, and I would sit at the house and be like, well, I'm gonna hang out with Michael some more. So mom, being a mom, said, well, when your next report card comes in, we'll see about signing you up for fall ball or whatever it was. And so I had to get the grades right, and then signed up with Little League, and that's how we got started.
Nice. And just to place you grew up in the Dallas area, and it sounds like you grew up in the Dallas area because you just said crawdads and creek in the same sentence.
Correct. Yeah.
So I could tell you're from the
bread.
South. Yeah. And also, I just saw you drinking coffee, obviously. So we'll get into your coffee. I'm going to call it passion. Some people call it addiction later. So you had this start with baseball. Obviously, it's super ingrained in how you grew up, and then you went to high school, you went to college, you ended up getting drafted by the Padres. Maybe go into that a little bit. I get tons of questions all the time Kids just want to know what it's like to get drafted. So we had Matt Antonelli, one of your former teammates, on the show last time, and we've obviously talked about Matt. And kids just love to get to know what it's like to get drafted. So take us into kind of your draft story and what that was like.
Yeah, first off, Anto's the man. He was my first pro roommate where I was like, oh, this guy's a god. He's a big leaguer. So learned a ton from him 12 years ago. So just shout out to Matt. He's got so much good information and just really cares about kids. So, but my draft story, I didn't get to play a ton in my junior season in college. And so back then was when they still had the draft and follow situation. So the idea is get drafted, play summer ball to kind of raise your stock a little bit and then negotiate from there. So I was playing in the Jayhawk League the year before that, played against the Liberal BJs, and Mike Hargrove, former big league manager, managed that with Coach McSpadden, who coached JUCO ball out there for a long time. And obviously there's someone you want to learn from. A former big league manager is pretty high up there. So I told them next summer I'd come play for them. So I was out there. We were kind of going through preseason workouts, things like that, talking to a lot of teams, just trying to figure out what to do. But the biggest thing back then was big league teams didn't want to waste picks on guys that weren't going to ultimately sign. And so just a lot of big questions on, are you signable? Are you going to go? And I was ready to go. So, everyone I talked to said, if you pick me up, I'm coming. And so I think back then it's round 1, 2, and 3, day one, and then like 4 to 30 after that. And so it was after practice. We were back at the host family's house, me and my 2 roommates, Luke Hochhaver's little brother, who also former forward cat. Late round pick. And so we're there. I got to get to the family's PC and, get the internet rolling, and just sitting there watching the ticker and watching the ticker and watching the ticker and watching the ticker and watching the ticker. But yeah, eventually phone goes off, and it was Dave with the Padres, and he said, hey man, I think we're about to grab you. And then pretty much as he was talking, name kind of went across the ticker there. And man, it's just such a surreal experience that, I can still picture everything that was on the desk and the feel of the office that I was sitting in. It's just kind of one of those life turning points where, you're not going to ever forget that. So it was awesome.
Yeah, dude, that's such a cool story. Honestly, I don't even know if I've ever asked you that before. It's kind of like, I don't know. I just never knew that, but it's a cool story for sure. So then what happened? You get drafted, and then they call you, and they're like, pack your bags. You're going here. You're going to go room with Matt Antonelli for the Padres. So kind of take us through. Did you just pick up and leave your host family's house, pack a couple bags, pack some coffee, and go?
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, I can't even remember. I would assume I went home. I'm definitely not afraid of the road trip. So I would assume I went from Kansas to home to Arizona. But everything happened in the matter of 2 weeks, I want to say. Rookie ball is about 50 some odd games long, so it's not a super long season. But yeah, you load up, you head out, you walk into the big league training facility and feel like you're walking on clouds, and meeting the manager, meeting coaches, training staff, all that stuff. And then you're playing games a week later. So Antonelli was my spring training roommate, so I didn't get to meet him for a couple of months, but yeah.
Nice. Cool. So everyone that gets drafted for the first time and they sign, they just kind of get thrown in to the mix, right? You go from playing either high school or college ball, and then all of a sudden you're a professional baseball player. The first part of your dream comes true. The second part is obviously make it to the major leagues. And then it goes from there, whatever. But so, what's the difference? You know what I mean? So you get to big league camp, you're around professional baseball players, and I'm assuming they're acting for the most part like professionals. But I mean, what was the big thing that stood out? Because you've been a professional for so long, you know so many guys, and if there's one guy I think of as a professional in terms of baseball, it's you. So I mean, what was the biggest difference you saw from going from college and your college buddies and people treating it like college, and then going to the pros? Is it routine? Is it the way that they carry themselves, or is it just a different atmosphere altogether?
Yeah, good question. So, just kind of looking at my motivators for playing, obviously going back to wanting to just hang out with Michael Moore. I was a guy that just wanted to be on the team, right? So, junior college, I played with a Tyler Ladendorf, who was a second-round pick. Got some big league time. That year I got drafted out of New Mexico. I was the last guy picked up. There's tons of other good players on my team. And so I always was afraid of getting outmatched when I would take that next step. So I just was hoping to get to college, and I make it to college, and I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm about to get my doors blown off. And, was able to hang there. And, same thing going up to pro ball. As far as the separator, or what did I realize? It was just that it was relentless, right? So in college and in high school, you got plenty of days off. And then once you get to pro ball, it's lather, rinse, repeat every single day of the week. So, my very first at bat, base hit to the right side, nice easy line drive. And then I think I went 0 for 10 with 7 strikeouts right after that. And it felt like that 0 for 10 was the very next day. And so just that the next game's coming mentality, and the next guy that's getting on the bump is trying to do as well as you are. And so there's no really time to relax until you kind of figure that out and realize that it is a long season, and it is easy to relax once you know that, hey, I belong here with the rest of these guys.
Yeah, that's cool. When did that switch kind of go off in your head, right? So you got a nice easy base hit, you went 0 for 10, and I'm assuming you might be in panic mode, because if you're in college, you're like, oh, I'm not going to get another AB for another 4 or 5 days, just because there's a lot less games. So if you had a Saturday game, you're not going to get another one until Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. When did you kind of just relax and say, oh, I have tons of time, tons of games, I'm good, I belong here? Did someone give you advice, or did it just kind of come naturally?
Yeah, no, it definitely didn't come naturally. It was thankfully plenty of coaches in pro ball understand what it was like, because they probably were going through the same things when they played or things like that. So I had a good amount of coaches all throughout my career that, we either see a player scuffling or see myself scuffling, and just give you that reminder, hey, man, you're a pro. We believe in you. Don't worry about one at bat. Just go out there and keep working hard. It was actually the pitching coach when I was with the Royals that we had a lot of guys get hurt, and I went from kind of being an afterthought to maybe being a 3-4 hole guy, and then that's when I struggled because I was trying too hard, right? And he kind of picked me out during batting practice and talked to me for a little while and said, hey, man, you're never going to single-handedly win a baseball game, so go try it. So he was super old school and tough, but the message behind it was strong and definitely, obviously, I remember it to today.
Nice. Yeah, you said something really interesting there, which I think usually gets a little overlooked. Your coach said, you're a pro. And I think, you being a pro, I mean, obviously you're getting paid to play baseball, you're a pro, but he wasn't talking about that. He was talking about the mentality from behind being a pro, right? So you don't have to be a professional baseball player to act like a professional baseball player, I guess, right? And I guess the people in college that I really admired and that I looked up to, they, in a sense, in college acted like they were a pro. So what do you think that mentality is? And I know it's changed from the day you stepped on a field for your first major league game until 10 years later when you already had 10 years of experience. So maybe take us into Now, after playing for 10 years, what's your advice on being a pro? And that doesn't have to be baseball. That could be business. That could be schoolwork. That could be anything. What's the mentality behind that?
Yeah, awesome question. I love the correlation of being a pro on and off the field. For me, the biggest thing on being a pro is you're trying to earn respect as opposed to playing time. So regardless of how good you are or your personality, or if your coach likes you or doesn't like you, or boss or whatever, if you go out there and consistently do your job and you work hard and you're honest and you do all these things and you earn the respect of your boss or your coach or your teammates, that to me is being professional. Because there's plenty of pros on every single big league roster, right? I know you guys are Red Sox fans out there in the Northeast, but I bet you there's a lot of Red Sox fans that can't name all 25 guys on the roster, but all 25 of those guys are pros. And for the most part, those guys have earned the respect of their teammates and their coaches, because even though they're not getting the multi-million-dollar contracts and the limelight and things like that, they're showing up just like all those other guys do, and they're putting in the same amount of work. And I think it's about earning the respect versus earning playing time.
Yeah, dude, that's a great answer. And to kind of piggyback on that answer, when I think of my very short time playing, a lot of it was with you on a field, and the person that I learned right away how to conduct myself on a field was from you, right? So I could never tell if you were angry or upset. You're very even-keeled already. You were definitely passionate. So I think sometimes, do you still hear me?
Sorry, phone call.
Oh no, you're good. You're blowing up. I think sometimes people confuse passionate for being kind of like eccentric and excited. You were passionate, but you were always, always, always even keel. So when I didn't know how to act or react to something, I was like, what would Cam do right now? And I would literally think, and same thing you said, would Cam respect me if I acted out in a certain way, or if I reacted to someone in a certain situation? So having guys on my team, like you, really kind of paved the way. And I for me at least, and I know you had those guys too, but whenever I needed kind of a little bit of guidance, and not even something that I would ask straightforward, like, hey, what do I do in this situation, I would just kind of follow suit. This is how you warm up for games. This is what you do. This is what you don't do. This is how you react to a certain situation. This is what happens when you're in a slump, and just kind of modeling myself after people like that. And you were definitely the first person that I modeled myself after, because I was a brand new, fresh rookie. Had no idea what's going on. So that was fun. But I think that was a great answer and super insightful for everybody, whether they're in Little League, whether they're in high school. I think taking that mentality and earning the respect. And another thing you said is being a good teammate. I mean, can you speak? I think this is super, super important. Can you speak to what being a good teammate is? I don't think people prioritize it enough. I don't think people understand what it means to be a good teammate. And I don't think people understand the effect it has on everybody and being a good leader. So can you just speak to, as a great teammate, how to be a good teammate and what going to being a good teammate is?
Yeah, sure. I think as far as looking at the best teammates that I've had in the past and some common characteristics, one is that person's probably an accountability friend or an accountability partner. Getting to know your teammates on a more personal level, because it is more than just baseball. Some of these people, like, we're on this podcast together because we're good friends, but also because we were good teammates to each other. And we got to know each other outside of baseball and understand the direction that we want to go. And baseball is a high leverage, emotionally intense competition. So having those guys there who know, hey, when Cam chases a bad pitch, he really needs to reset and focus on the next pitch. So having that teammate that's in the dugout that sees that and can catch you and holler at you or whatever, or talk to you after an at-bat or cool you down after an error. So having that friend or that teammate that knows what your triggers are, I think is super important. And then just genuinely caring about, the well-being of the team through each individual. So just knowing that baseball's super hard. It's a tough game to play, but confidence and being positive is what most good teams are doing. So just knowing that, hey, if I continue to pick my teammates up, that's going to have an impact on them, whether they know it or not, right? Patting them on the back might seem like a little thing, or, telling them nice swing or whatever it is. All those little things add up when you're battling against a game that tries to beat you up all the time. So for me, just, keeping my teammates accountable for what they say they want to do, whether it's practice early, extra swings, approach, things like that, and then just being positive.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And it does have such a big effect when, I think I would notice it more when someone's negative. It just brings everybody down and people kind of latch onto that. But fortunately, the same thing's true when people are positive. You're in like a tough streak. You might be in a slump, or your team might be losing a couple games, and there is one guy that still has so much energy, and that's still bringing energy to the field, still being positive, still being optimistic. I can just think of every team I've ever played on and who that person is and how big of an effect, because it can really change the swing of things. So, it only takes one guy to be a good teammate, right? To kind of change the way that the whole team's mindset is. And I've been on those, and so have you, on those toxic teams where there's one guy that is just super confrontational and it just kind of brings everybody down. And those are not only teams that I don't think ever did well, but teams that I never had fun on. So at the end of the day, the teams that I had the most fun on were around positive people, and we just happened to be winning because we were around guys that we enjoyed being around. So that's really good, and I really want everyone to hear that and listen to what it means to be a good teammate, because I just don't think people prioritize it. I'm not saying kids. I hate when people pander to just kids. I don't think most people really dive into, they say, how can I get my swing better? How can I change my mechanics? How can I throw harder? And no one really dives into, how can I just be the best teammate on the team, bring my team up every day? I don't think people put enough value on that. Go ahead.
There's no metric for good vibes, right? So it's tough to put attention and effort into that.
Yeah, I love good vibes.
Red Sox good vibes coach, they have one. He basically travels around to all the minor league clubs and plays cards and tells jokes, because that is a real thing.
What are 3 ways, and if you want to stop at 2, that's fine, that someone could just go be a good teammate right now?
Yeah, have a conversation, right? Just talk to a teammate, talk to a friend, ask a question, see what they're working on. Is always a good one. Thinking about what each of your teammates does well, so that you have something positive to say about them. So, whether you're in Little League or high school or college or whatever, we're all going to have our pieces of our game that we're working on, but we probably have something that we just are naturally gifted at. So thinking about what does Josh do really well, and having that in the front of your mind will make it easier to stay positive and encourage them to keep working hard. So you said I could stop at 2, so I'm stopping at 2 right there.
I gave you an out. I never should have given you an out. No, I like that, and those are tactical, and they're actionable. So I hope people kind of heed that advice and actually go have that conversation. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably playing baseball or interested in baseball, and you want to learn something tactical you can bring back with you to the field, something that you can learn. And I think those are 2 great ways to do it, and something that you should really, really prioritize. You could have the worst swing on the team. You could be a great teammate and make a significant difference on everybody. So that was a great answer. Good job.
Yeah,
Golf
100%.
Cool. I want to not switch gears. I still kind of want to keep thinking deeply about why you had such a long career. I mean, 10 years is a long career. And I'd love to know kind of the switches that happened throughout your career. So, you started with the Padres, you ended in Cleburne. What is one thing you've changed your mind on, from your 10-year career, from the first day to the last day?
Yeah, plenty of times changed my mind on things because you never know what the right answer is a lot of times. But one thing was swing style and swing approach. But even let me back up from there is just the transition from I'm going to do whatever I think my coach wants me to do or whatever he's telling me to do to I'm going to figure out baseball on my own and understand what I believe in, and I'm going to work on that because it's so much easier to do that than to try and figure out what's going on in your coach's head or your coordinator's head or the GM's head, because ultimately those people also get fired and traded and moved around. So, I think for a big part of my career, starting from, Little League to last season, I spent a lot of time trying to do what I thought would get me in the lineup, whatever it was, whether it was steal bases, whether it was bunts, whether it was, swing for the fences, and so I was kind of a chameleon-like player because I just wanted to play. And it's really tough to then, outside of the games, work on those things that you don't really understand what you're doing, right? I'm trying to hit homers. Oh, cool, that's sounds fine, but how do you work on that versus understanding the battle of pitch sequences and understanding how hitting the ball hard or creating force and all the technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I could have started learning that much earlier in my career and been a better hitter earlier in my career, versus that transition happened maybe halfway through the pro tenure, so to speak. So really just becoming an honest student of the game and continuing to learn about the game and what I think I should be doing instead of what other people think I should be doing. I think it was a huge inflection point in my career, and helped not only with performance, but also just with enjoying the game. And I've said it a couple of times, but you gotta it's more than baseball. You gotta enjoy what you're doing, and if you are curious or you're passionate about what you're learning about, you're gonna do a better job at it.
Yeah, that's great, and it definitely leads me to two questions. I guess the first one's more of a comment. So I asked Matt, your old teammate, same question, and he said the exact same thing. So he said, you're your own hitting coach. You need to be your own best hitting coach. And you're basically saying the same thing is, you got yourself to where you are. Of course, you had help along the way. You had good coaches and mentors, but, ultimately, it's you putting in the work. It's you feeling every swing. It's you. No one's ever going to be with you 100% of the time, right? Honestly, you might have told me that one time. But no one's ever with you 100% of the time. No one knows you like you know you. So I think that's super important advice. And then you said one other thing, which I thought was really cool. Halfway through your career, you started to learn hitting. And I want to just dig into that. I mean, it was one of the questions that I definitely wanted to talk about. You're someone who really, really changed how I looked at hitting, and this wouldn't be a podcast between me and you if we didn't give Michael Pear a shout out. So,
Yes.
so
Inevitable.
yeah, so I want to give like a quick background just so people can understand. Um, you know, I was very, very, very dogmatic in my thinking. Down to the ball, backspin, squish the bug, all of these things that I know we're getting away from, and I know um, it's becoming ancient the way that we're talking about this, but that's how I grew up. That's how you grew up. We didn't grow up with all the video technology. We didn't grow up with Instagram. We didn't grow up with this stuff. So, I mean, I looked at pictures in like a booklet of like Mo Vaughn at like point of contact, and hitting's changed so much. And I was completely dogmatic that I knew how to hit, but that being said, I couldn't hit. So it was kind of like this weird thing. I was trying to get really, really, really good, at doing something the wrong way. And you were one of the people that really changed the way that I looked at hitting, that I approached hitting, and working with you and Pear and Florence just in the cages. Like that was the most learning I've ever done in like 3 weeks. I mean, it changed my whole perspective. So, number one, I want people to know that just don't be dogmatic about anything. Don't believe in something so much that no one can change your mind. Allow people to change your mind. Allow them to open up to you, because that's what you did. And then, kind of, my question for you is, what happened halfway through your career? What were you like before? What did you learn, and how did you implement that?
Yeah, so I'll for sure talk about the hitting transitions, but also too sometimes these conversations lead to another problem for I think a lot of younger hitters. And so what I don't want to have happen is people be afraid of just hitting the wrong way, and it's
Hmm.
okay. Um, because there's so much information out there. I think a lot of times we get caught up in I have to train the perfect way
Hmm.
instead of just training. Because, you can look at it two different ways, right? Uh, I could have figured out hitting sooner, cool, but maybe the struggles taught me how to have a better approach.
Hmm.
Or also, I played pro ball for 5 years, swinging a way that I don't believe in now, right?
Hmm.
And that's a pretty good baseball career. I think a lot of people listening would sign a contract to do that right now.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so, even though I eventually learned more about my swing and I'm more confident in what I was doing on the back end of my career, I don't want kids and coaches and parents or whatever to discourage work ever, because
Hmm.
that's ultimately what's going to be the teacher. Um, but where the encouragement needs to be is what I figured out 5 years later was learning and asking my own self questions and asking other people questions. So where my swing changed was I was in affiliated baseball, then I was out of affiliated baseball for a couple of years, and I was trying to figure out, okay, if I'm not progressing in my career, then there's probably something I need to do differently. So either fortunate or unfortunate, I played with a guy named Chris Colabello in 2011, someone that and we hung out in the locker room, didn't even know it. Um, but
Yeah, that's
Bobby
funny.
Bobby Tewksbury is his hitting coach,
Hmm.
he's now super famous for working with Donaldson and guys like that. But before then, he was Chris's guy, and he has a pretty cool ebook. But just working with him and consuming all this information that I'd never seen before, just forced me to reevaluate everything. And so, I think that was the thing you were saying about being dogmatic about your style is you can't do that because there's so much information out there and there's so many different things that you can try or do, and they're not all going to work. There's plenty of drills that I did, and I did them for one day and said I don't like this at all. Um, this is making me do worse things, and you move on to something else. But you have to work and you have to try it and you have to consider it and continue to learn and develop even when you're 25, 15, 10. It doesn't matter.
Hmm.
There's always something to learn and develop and get better at. But um, yeah, swing style, I think similar as far as the thought process of swinging down. Um, I had a linear hitting coach in college, which taught me a lot of things really well. Uh, but I think working with Tukes and Chris and Michael Pear and even yourself, just having those conversations with another person helps you to flesh out, is what I'm doing right, or do I really understand what I'm talking about, or do I really understand
Hmm.
what I'm working on? Beyond hitting, there the pitching side of development and what the right things to do are and aren't is a whole another ballpark too. Um, but at the end of the day, if you don't understand what you're working on, how can you be sure that you're getting better? So that's what I think changed at that point in my career, hitting wise, was I understood what I wanted to get out of my training, and then connected the dots between where I wanted to go and the stuff I was doing to get there.
Yeah, cool. And I love that because it's such a systematic approach to getting better, right? I think it's sometimes really hard for people to understand. I'm here and I want to be here, but what are the steps in between? And you kind of answered that question, and I want to dive into it a little bit more. Is you said I kept asking questions. I kept asking questions, and those are the steps in between. You're asking yourself these questions to get to where you want to go. You're asking Chris Colabello these questions, and Tukes and Pear and all these people that you're hitting with. What were some of those questions? You know what I mean? Mechanically, what were some of those questions? And any of those questions that helped you get from point A to point B, because you are very systematic in your approach, and I think this is going to really help a lot of people out to say that you don't just go from point A to point B overnight. It's a process, and it's a process that's cultivated by asking questions. Sometimes the wrong questions, sometimes the right questions, but if you could speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, well, so just for anyone that doesn't know, Chris Colabello was a MLB hitter, and he was on the time. He was either, when we talked a ton, either leading AA in homers or AAA in homers or getting called up to the Blue Jays. But we would hang out in the hotel room and talk for 3 hours straight after a game. And, what I always try to do is gain someone else's perspective, because I know how I see everything pretty clearly. But there's plenty of other players and coaches out there that know more than I do, that are better than I am, and they view the world as a whole differently. So just asking Chris especially was really good at this, to just take me through his at-bats, because he would remember everything. It was incredible. And, at the big league level, you've got more information that a little league kid or a select playing kid's not going to have, as far as he throws this slider 87% of the time in a 1-1 count. But knowing that that's kind of the direction that you need to be going is a lesson in itself. That, okay, if I don't have the data behind, I know what pitch is coming. I can't sit slider 1-1 in my league or in high school or in college. So then if I don't know what pitch is coming, what do you sit on? And then, letting that player expand on that. And I think the biggest thing is just understanding that what works for one player might not work for you. Mm-hmm. But if you have another perspective, you can then change your mind when things don't work out for you, right? So we could talk hitting, and I could say, 0-0 count, I'm looking fastball down and in to hit for a homer, right? And then you could say, well, 0-0 count, I'm hitting leadoff, so I'm looking for a fastball out over the plate that I can hit the other way. And then now that we have that conversation, I've got this frame of reference of, okay, this is what I'm doing, this is what he's doing. Now a week goes by, you're 3 for 4 in your leadoff at bats with 3 singles, and I've taken 4 fastballs on the outer half for strike one, because no one's going to throw me a cookie fastball pitch one, right? So then now you have something to work off of. So I don't think I gave you any specific questions, kind of like you were saying, but hopefully that all makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you kind of did. I mean, you're basically going back over the game, and then I think questions kind of pose themselves, right? So it's kind of hard because all the questions you were asking were very specific to you at that particular time. You know what I mean? So you did give me one question that you asked back in that time. Questions that I felt like I used to ask is, why are you doing that?
Yes.
And and I remember being in the Florence.
Why is a good question.
Yeah, why? Because not only do not enough hitting coaches explain why, they just say this is the drill: hit a basketball off the tee. It helps your forearm strength. Which is probably my worst. I hate that drill so much. but they just don't explain why. And I think anyone should be able to ask their coach or their hitting coach why, and their hitting coach or their coach or GM or whoever should compassionately be able to explain why. And if they can't explain why, then maybe they should ask someone why, or they should kind of dig in. And I think why is a really good starting point. And honestly, and I just thought of why because it changed when I was talking about we were in Florence, Kentucky, and I saw Michael Parra doing his high T drill with all these like bands attached to him. And I go, why? I go, why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And he's like, you hit like this, and he was swinging straight up over the tee. And I was like, no, man, that's not how you hit. That's not how I was taught to hit. That's not how you hit. And he's like, no, this is how you hit. Just, hear me out. I go, okay, why are you doing that? And he started to explain to me swing path and all this. And I remember that day because it was such a weird drill. You know what I mean? And I worked in batting cages my whole life, like learning from these people. I've never seen this drill. And I just said, why are you doing that? Instead of saying, what are you doing? And he explained it to me, and it just made so much sense. And then I went down that rabbit hole with you and him and just talking, hitting all the time. And it completely changed my perspective. And I think that some hitting coaches take offense to why, which I really don't like or understand. Some coaches take offense to why, and they just say, don't question me. You know what I mean? And that's where I think my dogmatic approach to hitting and everything came from is I never once asked why. I just said, someone older than me or more experienced than me is teaching me something. Don't ask why, just do it. And that can, to come full circle, that leads back around to exactly what you were saying earlier. You have to be your own best hitting coach. You have to be your own, your own coach. You have to do everything for yourself and self-evaluate. So,
and the best way to do that is to just try different things, right? So even if, you see some guy in the cage doing some goofy thing, you say why, and you still don't even understand what that person's telling you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's wrong to still try that stuff, because that way, again, you have some sort of understanding of how does this feel, was this good, was this bad, and then go from there.
Yeah, I think that's great, and at least it's a starting point. I think people just get stuck and they don't know where to go or who to ask or what to do. So maybe that's a good starting point for people. I feel like we could talk all day, and I have a lot more, don't worry. But I'm like, I keep going back because you keep saying interesting things that you pass over that I really want people to understand, because I know that you understand it so deeply. And you talked about this maybe like 5 or 10 minutes ago. You said I wouldn't, you played 5 years with that old swing that now you don't even believe in. And you said that was a really important experience for you. And you doing that actually led you to a place. We both read a book called The Obstacle is the Way. That's exactly what it is. You're very, you're definitely a believer in that, obviously. And you explain it. You explained it well in terms of your baseball career, but could you go into kind of what that means? Because I think that's such an important thing. And I do want to talk books because I want kids to realize that you don't just make things up. You study really hard. You're constantly learning. We have these conversations without a microphone in front of us all the time. So could you speak to not just Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, but kind of maybe what that means to you and how we could kind of put it in baseball terms?
Yeah, for sure. Also, I already pre-ordered my book, so hopefully you did too. But yeah, it's easy to look back and say, oh, I was doing this wrong all along, right? And just be annoyed with it or whatever. But when you're playing a game that's full of failure, wouldn't it be nice to make all of the failure a positive experience for you instead of, oh, well, I'm just trying to succeed 3 out of 10 times. So, I had 5 years of at-bats of trying to be a leadoff hitter, so to speak, or the old school leadoff hitter of get on top of the ball, hit it in the 4-hole, get base hits, whatever. And then actually, part of a turning point was, again, late night conversations in the hotel after a game, and one of my teammates me and Joe Rapp made the All-Star team, which was surprising because I hit 300 with none homers, and he hit like, 270 with 8 at,
Yeah.
halfway through the season or whatever it was. And the discussion between the 5 or 6 guys in there was, which player would you rather have? And undoubtedly you want the guy that's putting runs on the board, because, hitting 300 is great, but it doesn't always lead to run production. And when you look at the root of the game, the guys that touch home plate the most win the game, and that's what you want. So, but I had the experiences of being a leadoff style, get on top hitter as my now frame of reference against when I changed my swing style to, hey, hitting doubles and hitting balls over the fence is so much better than hitting a single. Like, it was cool that I could steal bases and stuff like that, but when you have something to go off of, to tie our friend Michael Pear back in, we had this conversation a lot because this past year I was fortunate enough to play with Rafael Palmeiro as my locker mate and as my teammate and my locker buddy. And talking hitting with him is awesome because he has such a fine-tuned approach, because he had more plate experiences in his career than the rest of our team did combined by a lot.
Yeah, insane.
And so that was great to talk to him about. But talking hitting mechanics and things like that, Michael Pear and I would argue with him because it's like, okay, Rafi, you've never been bad, right? Like, you've never had to fix your swing. You literally were born and had a perfect, pure left-handed swing, and you hit over 500 homers. Like, not saying that he didn't work, because I've seen him, again, being a pro and, showing up and working on his craft. But, some people have to work on totally different things. Some people have to work on lower half. Some people have to work on hand-eye coordination. Some people have to work on mobility, right? Being able to even get into the right positions to begin with. So, yes, looking back, maybe my career is different, or maybe my path is different if I learned things faster, or if I was told things at a different time or whatever. But the struggles that you work through, and the key is working through it, you have to keep working no matter what, is what will then allow you to, when you find something that's a better option, to then say, this is a better option because this is where I was.
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think it's just I wouldn't even say an optimistic view of looking at things. I think it's a necessary view of looking at things. Because, you could have learned that 5 years before, but you didn't, and you never would have got to that point in your career if you didn't have some type of struggle. And it is kind of funny because remember that, like, the video with A-Rod came out, and he's like, this is how you hit. And people just went crazy. They're like, and then they showed the videos of him, and he had like this perfect, this perfect like bat path and swing, and he's showing people like, you got to go right down to the ball, even though that's not what he was doing. And it is crazy because he thinks one thing and his body does something different, and he's never had to break down mechanics the same way other people do. And I think once again it goes back to being your own coach and dissecting. But I think what you just said, just to reiterate, because it was absolutely perfect. You do need to go through those trials to get to a place where you want to be. So I guess the lesson in that would just be keep going and keep reevaluating yourself, like you keep telling people. So that was good. I'll give you another golf clap on that one.
Well, take all.
Sweet, man. So I want to go into kind of I wouldn't say your personal life, but I do want to go back to what we said about books and how much you study, what you're learning. Obviously, I mean, it's not obvious to me. It's obvious because I know who you are. It had such a big impact on your baseball career. And it can sound very cheesy. Oh, the mental game of baseball. It's 90% mental. That doesn't mean anything without context. That doesn't mean anything without seeing someone who's actually doing it. So, I know you're very humble. I just don't want you to be for a second. I want you to tell people, you do work very hard at learning new skills, learning things that put you out of your comfort zone, at trying things, at exploring different parts of the country. And I know you work really hard on, your mentality, not just mental toughness, but you have a shirt from Warstick that says gratitude, which is an awesome shirt. And, you have all of these things to be a good person and a kind person, to live a happy life that just happened to have a great effect on your baseball career. So could you just tell us, maybe even the start of that, what made you start reading books? Was it always like that? What made you start studying, and why do you continually try to get better every single day at what you're doing? And to, after you're done with that, let's dig into a couple of your favorite books and why.
Yeah, sure. So this seems to be a common theme here of doing things what I now think is the right way after not doing things that way. So, as a young lad, as a little kid in Weatherford, Texas, I hated reading in school. And I always felt like it was a waste of time, because it was slow and boring, or, whatever it is. And now I've probably gone back and actually read all the required reading material from Texas schools, because they're good books to begin with. But part of it is I'm very lucky and fortunate enough to have played for 10 years, because part of the journey and the process is 100% just showing up. A lot of this stuff I figured out at some point along the way, and I don't know if I would have learned these things, or if I would still be on the path that I'm on if I just decided this is too hard, I'm going to hang it up, or maybe I just didn't like baseball anymore. That can happen too. But none of these, life transitions happened in year one. It was just a part of continuing to show up and continuing to be curious, which I guess I'm thankful for that. But I realized that, again, it's another common theme is to cultivate perspective. And I think it's super huge to do, and reading other people's stories, reading other people's ideas, forcing yourself to think for yourself, and to understand what you really believe in, and find some clarity around what you're doing. Like you said, the mental game is kind of this arbitrary cloud, and what does it really mean? And but there's tons of practices out there about visualization, and if you can see the perfect swing, you can have the perfect swing, and things like that. But the same thing applies to anything else in your life. If you have clarity around where you want to go, what you want to do, what you want to have, what you don't want to have, that clarity will allow you to have that. But if you're not comparing and contrasting things, if you're not learning new ways to swing or throw or train or work or have a conversation or have relationships or whatever it is, then it's tough to have clarity, right? Because then you are that coach that we don't like, that we say, hey, why do you coach like that? And they just say, well, so I've always done it. Right? Because they haven't ever challenged their experience with another idea that is contrary to what they're doing. There's plenty of people, like talking about the A-Rods and the great hitters of all time. If they looked at some other hitting drills, they'd be like, well, this doesn't work. And I'd be like, yeah, you're right. Your swing's great. So just keep doing what you're doing. Right. Yeah. But you're not going to be perfect. You're not going to be great at everything. You're not going to have that ability to be the best at everything. So to not continue to consume knowledge and information, especially in the world that we're in today, is irresponsible, right? So that's kind of why I continue to learn, because why not? Like, what's the other option? You know? um, so I think it's super important to, continue to learn, but also going back to passions and things like that. It's so much easier to learn about passions than things that you could care less about, right? You know, when it comes to training and things like that, sports psychology is super interesting to me, so I can read that, for a whole day, versus strength and conditioning stuff. Yeah, I think it's cool, and yes, it's super important, but I can't geek out about that like I can what's going on in your head when you're trying to hit a fastball.
Yeah. There's like a million ways I want to go right now. One of them, I want to dig into your sports psychology background. You're a certified mental training coach. You've done tons and tons of research into this. You didn't just pick up a book and read the Daniel Coyle book or whatever and say, I'm a mental, certified coach, whatever. You definitely read more sports psychology books and research than anyone else I know. And not only that, but you have the experience to contextualize it and say, oh, this would have been helpful at this stage of my career, as opposed to some doctor sitting on a table that has all these degrees, and which is great too, but to combine your experience with that knowledge is a superpower. So I think I definitely want to dive into that. I think the first thing that I want to ask you is you said you're curious. You're definitely curious. Why or where or when or how, anyone you choose, where did you begin to be curious, and how did you approach that?
Yeah, so I think it was the year actually we kind of started playing together. I was a couple years in at this point, and you figure out, like, okay, cool, I'm 6'1", 220, fast, strong, could throw the ball 95, like you check all the boxes there. So it's like, what's the problem?
I checked
Or
none of
not
those
what?
boxes, by the way. I didn't check one of those. Not even close.
Great teammate, great
Yeah.
teammate. Checked it. Um, but you I think it's human nature to want to always have more, or be better, or continue to progress. Um, and so the learning about mental performance was pretty new then. I mean, it's still, I mean, it's mental health, all these trends. It As I go to learn about it, and as light bulbs continue to just keep going off, ding, 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 right? Now that I was able to learn about what's going on when I'm in the box, why do sometimes my legs feel numb, or whatever, why do I walk back to the dugout after a 6 pitch at bat and I don't even know what happened. um, you know then you can read research studies and experiences and things like that that explain it to you. And then when you have a better understanding of something, you can then start to work at it. You can start to nibble away at, okay, the yips are a real thing. This is the problem with it. This is the way to get better at it. Whatever. So that really started in 2012, and it's just, I haven't exhausted my curiosity. There's just so much out there. And the reality is, we're social creatures. We are driven off of emotions, whether we like it or not. It's easy to try to be, that ideal big leaguer who's always, even keeled and never spikes their stuff and never gets upset, but that's just not reality. So I just know that there's a ton of really good physical coaches out there, from swings to pitching to defense to hitting. And so for me, I enjoy interacting with people, and I enjoy helping people overcome their mental issues. Not that they're a negative thing about them, but just, you have mental issues just like you have physical issues. You have, some people get too hyped. Some people can't get hyped enough, or whatever it is. And so it's always a unique problem, which for someone that is maybe all over the place, thought process wise, it's nice to you and I can talk about what we struggled with, and then some kid can walk in here and it might be totally different. But it's also an unmeasurable thing, so it's tough to define. So I really like that challenge of trying to figure out how do we turn mental skills into something that I can digest, and something that kids can start to work on much earlier than now. All the big league clubs have mental skills directors, and maybe there's 2 or 3 people on staff. So that trend should be pretty loud and clear that it's a real thing and it does have an impact. But also too, the more I learn about childhood development and things like that, like, this 13 to 20 window of your development is so huge for how you then continue down the path of your life. So, it's, again, as you can tell, just kind of, I could talk about this stuff for 20 more minutes, but I'm going to wrap it up. But
honestly, you don't have to wrap it up. I got all day. There's no time limit on this. I mean, I can't put it on YouTube because it's over an hour, but other than that,
yeah,
I would love to get into it. A lot of the people listening are between 13 and 20. Why is that such an important window?
Yeah. So, looking at kind of that 13 cutoff point, pre 13 is, what am I good at? So that's why your youth coaches are super important, to make sure they're positive, right? So you can have kids try something new at 10, 11, 12, and if they think they're not very good and they get feedback from a parent or a coach that they're not very good, they're just going to quit and they're going to be done with it. And then from 13 to 18 or 13 to 20 is such a huge time for the brain's still developing, right? We have some of the slowest developing brains out there. And if we can't figure out kind of where we belong, or what we're passionate about, or things like that, it really closes a lot of doors after the fact. Again, super fortunate to just have some good parents and coaches in my life that, again, I think it's a common parent thing, but you'll thank me one day, but and they were right about some of that stuff. But yeah, it's a super huge window in development of, do I keep going down this path, or do I shut down? Do I give up? And then just kind of fall into the tracks of society, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. No, it reminds me of self-fulfilling prophecies. So, I mean, that sounds kind of like mystic, but I was a psychology major. That's what I got my bachelor's degree in. And the one thing that stood out is exactly what you just said. There was a study where the psychologists had all these kids take the test in 5th grade, right? And this is completely applicable. All these kids took the tests, and then the psychologist took the test. They threw them in the garbage, and they just randomly selected 3 or 4 kids, told the teachers, hey, these people really outperformed everyone else. And I know you're familiar with this study. And then what happened was the teachers viewed those 3 or 4 kids in a completely different way. They gave them extra attention. They gave them more encouragement. They answered their questions more efficiently. They treated them more like adults. And then at the end of the year, those teachers actually gave those kids much higher grades than the other, like a lot higher. And the kids were no more smart, no less smart than anyone else in the class. And that has always stuck with me, how important it is for coaches to give people not necessarily equal feedback, but individual feedback. And that was right what you were saying. And I feel like that is the age period, 10 to 20 years old. That's when you kind of form these opinions about yourself. And if you form the opinion that you're a really good baseball player, and then everyone around you tells you you're a really good baseball player, you go, cool, what do good baseball players do? They practice. What do good baseball players do? They study. What do good baseball players do? They exercise. And then you go down that rabbit hole, and then it starts to kind of compound. And then vice versa, exactly what you just said. If you get the feedback, you have one bad game, someone tells you know you're horrible at baseball. You say maybe I am horrible at baseball, and then you do what baseball players do. You go with your friends and you don't practice. And I think that's like a super good point. I think that's a great point for people not only 10 to 20 years old, but kind of everybody. You know, you're at a stage in your life, going back to why you're so curious. I already think you're a really successful person, but you know, you've told yourself a story that you can basically create the life that you want for you, working backwards and being curious and reading books and testing assumptions. So I think I think it definitely applies more to 10 to 20 years old, but I think it still applies to anyone, you know, even after you're 20. So I would love to keep talking about what you're doing to continue on being a good teammate and a good person. And I want to talk about how crazy consistent you are. And this is my segue. I wasn't a great segue, but you have been working out on Instagram, not on Instagram. You've been working out in actuality, but people get to see it on Instagram at Cameron Monger for 1,702 days or 3 days.
Today will be 3.
All right, cool. So I looked it up. Before we got on. So just to let everyone know, that's 1,702 days of working out every single day. And the reason you started it is so simple. But it's something that you've just kept to for literally years now, working out. And I know it's been such an awesome journey for you. I love reading the quotes that you put up there and seeing the research that you're doing. I know that everything that you put out there is so well thought out. So can you tell us about your Instagram page, about the project that you're doing, why you're doing it, if you're ever going to stop? Just tell us everything.
Yeah, sure. No, so it originally started as just an accountability test. So I kind of realized that I was on this training every day deal. But I think it was a book I had read, I'm sure, right? And talking about accountability, and you know, there's not to bag on these mantras or whatever, right? Character is who you are when no one's watching. Cool, but if you're better when someone's watching all the time, then just get someone to watch you all the time, right? There's nothing wrong with having accountability. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So I know that as social creatures, if I tell you, hey, I'm going to do this, then when it gets close to the end of the day or the deadline or whatever it is, I would rather not let you down than let myself down. But we've all let ourselves down hundreds of thousands of times, right? Like, we're in our own heads, we know ourselves the best, and the devil angel, whatever you want to call it, on our shoulders, when you say, oh, I'm going to do this, that other person's like, I've seen you not do that before, but you don't know me as well as I know me. So I would rather not let someone that thinks I'm a good person down than what's going on in my own head, right? So I was leveraging that idea, and it seems to be working. Now it's a habit, right? So it's not hard for me to be on vacation or for me to be out of town and understand I don't have equipment with me, so I'm just going to wake up, knock out a bunch of push-ups and some bodyweight movement and some yoga or whatever I think my body needs that day, and jump in the shower and go about my day. It's become a habit, but the deeper side behind it is when I was forcing myself to make posts and things like that, and to continually think, I think that has accelerated my development as a person, as a coach, as a friend, whatever you want to call it. Because it is about the journey. It is about being present. It is about, what are you battling today? It is about thinking about that stuff. And I think that's, huge for anybody, whether they're playing, whether they're not playing, whatever's going on. I think having thought behind what you're doing is super valuable and super important, and something that we should be doing. And so now it's less about the training side, and sometimes I'll video whatever workout I was doing, and then I'll get home and be laying in bed and be like, oh, I forgot to post today. So the posts don't always make it. But the training hasn't stopped, and the idea behind it, and what the goal is ever changing, which is kind of cool too, right? Now that I'm not playing, I'm forced to reevaluate, why am I training? What are my goals? And all that stuff I've learned by training every single day. And now that it's up to, 1,700, which seems like so much, but really it happens so fast. But to have 1,700 days of just considering what direction you're going, you can't not be going in the right direction after that.
That's pretty cool. The obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I want to dive a little bit into your mentality, because that's, I mean, it is amazing, and I like that you said that now it's a habit. I really want people to understand that. But you're at the beginning of this. We've all had the self-talk, and I love the way that you explained that, by the way, because I feel like anytime I'm about to do something hard, if it's inconvenient, I rationalize myself out of it. Right?
Correct.
I think everybody does that. They're like, oh, I could go work out right now, but I'm a little sore. I don't want to overtrain.
Yeah.
I'm doing air quotations right now. And you can just we're so good at rationalizing ourselves out of things that we know are good or that we need to do. So, when that self-talk comes up and it says, hey, Cam, you don't really need to do this. You don't really need to eat your 4 eggs with spinach this morning. That was your breakfast this morning, I think.
Yep. Same thing.
What goes through that? How do you push through that? Because I think that's really hard for everybody. And the accountability is definitely an unbelievable tool. And I'd like to tell people about how we used to Venmo each other too. And I'd honestly like to start that again. And now we have accountability on our podcast. So, but what's your self-talk when you're going through that rationalizing in your head, and how do you overcome that?
Yeah, good question. So typically, like I said, the stuff that's become habits, it's easier it's just part of the daily routine or whatever it is. The stuff that is the new idea, the thing that you're working on, that is what you need to do to get to where you want to be, that is going to be super cool when you start it, and super crappy when when the spark of, I want to accomplish something new, or I want to make varsity, or I want to get drafted, that's going to wear off in 2 weeks. And so there's a couple of things you can do. One, again, is have an accountability side, whether it's a coach, a parent, whatever, someone that is going to kick you in the butt when you don't do it. But also just scheduling time to reevaluate your goals. I think goal setting is this thing that everyone wants to talk about, setting the proper goals or how to structure a goal, which there are best practices for goal setting, but it's not a homework assignment. Like, I'm not just going to set a goal and turn it in and then move on. The goal is there, and the structure of the goal is there to motivate you and to keep you going. So if you don't, when you feel like you're starting to lose that spark, or you feel like you get that negative self-talk of, I don't really need to go put in the extra work today, if you go back and consider what your goal is and why you want to get there, and if that doesn't fire you up, then maybe it's time to reevaluate, and that's fine, right? One of the mental skills practices that I like to teach early on is creating your ideal character, right? Your ideal baseball player, your ideal brother, whatever it is you want to call it. And that is goal setting in itself, right? So if you want to play like a, Bryce Harper, or you want to, pitch like a Justin Verlander or whatever, that would be a good frame of reference.
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to necessarily be a real person. But if you ask yourself, when you get those tough mental self-talk of, do I really need to do this, whatever, if you ask yourself, how would my ideal character respond to this? The answer is right there, and it's automatic, and it's not hard anymore. I shouldn't say that it's not hard to do the work, but the clarity is there, right? And I think that's a big part of it, is understanding this is the goal I'm working on. This is why I want to be there. And that is going to fade away as you continue to work. So then it's just this balance of, I'm motivated, I'm working. Why am I doing this? This is hard. Let me get back to why I'm doing it and remind myself very vividly and clearly, like if kids that want to be MLB players can visualize stepping on an MLB field for the first time, like that gives you goosebumps, right? And so being able to continue to connect to that end goal that you're working for is a good way to continue to light that spark.
Dude, that is so incredibly helpful. I mean, number one, I did get goosebumps when you said that, because that has to be a trigger for so many people. I mean, when I was playing, I visualized how I would walk out, what the ground would feel like. No one ever told me to do that. I was just like, this is what's going to happen. How do I get there? It never happened, but we're on a podcast, still talking, so life's still good. But the way that you just broke that down is so helpful. And selfishly, I was just thinking, all the little consolations I've made in the past couple weeks, and things do start to get really hard and difficult, and then do your goals outweigh that difficult thing? And when you're talking about a character, if you could just speak to that a little bit more, I think it would really help, because Justin Verlander is a great baseball player, but can you have more than one character? Because we don't know what he's like off the field. We don't know if, I hope Justin Verlander's listening. Maybe he's lazy and maybe he doesn't do anything. He's just born with all this talent, and he's 6'5", and whatever, he throws 101. But what does going into building that character look like? Is it yourself in the future, or is it someone that's already out there that you can study, or is it multiple people? Like, how do you personally do it? Not just how do you teach it, but how do you actually do it? Because you do such a good job of it. I want to know, what your tips and tricks are.
Yeah. So, it's a process for sure to build your own character. And early on, there might not be this connection of this is me in the future. But that is 100% the direction that it's going. Mm-hmm. We all have this ideal version of ourselves, whether we know that's what it is or not. We have our actual self of who we are. Like I said, you've been in your own brain as much as anyone else. You're the only one that's done that. And then we have our perceived self, which is how other people see us. So. Mm-hmm. The farther these three people get apart, the more stress we have in our lives. And we all know how stress works out, especially on a field, not good. But just to kind of hammer home that analogy, if we think about politics, right? Like anytime a politician's trying to convince us this is what they believe, and then something comes out that they did something totally different, that's going to cause them stress, because now they're not going to, win their race or whatever it is. So that's kind of a way to think about what's my perceived self, my ideal self, and my real self. But when it comes to building your character, I think it's the things you have to consider are both the physical and, I don't want to say spiritual from a religion side, but just, how your character acts. And you can pull from movies, you can pull from other players, you can pull from friends and family, whatever it is. But the more vivid you can be about your character, again, some common themes here with clarity and all of that, the more you can see that character in real life, when you close your eyes or when you lay your head down, the easier it is to connect with that. So I'll just kind of dive into my character real quick. Is based off of Atlas, which is the from Greek mythology, and in the real story, Atlas lost a battle, and his punishment was to hold the world up, right? But I changed it for the better of myself, and talking about being good teammates and things like that. I've got this team of 25 guys. What do I want to spend my time doing? If I can put my time, energy, and effort into making each player 0.5% better, that's better than me focusing on myself and getting 2% better, because the team is now going to be better. And so this idea of, you can picture Atlas holding the world up, but to me, the people I'm around, my inner circle, my teammates, my family, though, that's the world, and that's what I'm trying to hold up. So when I'm faced with tough situations, or when I'm faced with negative self-talk, or what I should be focusing on, what I should say yes or no to, if I ask myself, how would Atlas, someone who's trying to continually improve the people they're around, how would they respond to that? The answer is always going to be easy. And so I think too, anytime we're working on a visualization piece, or something with imagery involved, your goal should be to remove all questions. So I skipped over a lot of stuff with how I visualize my character, but ideally, if I were to just talk about Atlas, you're not going to have any more questions for me. It's going to be crystal clear who that character is, just like when you go and you watch a movie and you can describe the character that the actor has played out, because they do such a good job with it.
Yeah. That's so important. I literally want to go home and work on my character tonight, because that was such tactical advice that people can start using right now, today, to get better personally and to get better at baseball. I mean, I know we have a little bit of limited time now, but man, you gave so much wisdom and understanding from your experience and your research and your studying to everybody. Number one, thank you so much for being on. I want to ask you one more question, and then I want everyone to go follow you at Cameron Monger on Instagram. And then I want you to give shout outs to whoever you want. If you want to give Michael Pear another shout out, we can do that too. There it is. But I guess, the last thing I have for you is, if you were 16 again, what advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
Yeah, good one. So this is always the question, right? And that's what I think as a coach or a former player, that's what we're all trying to do, is give back to kids what we wish we knew then. That's what's easy to be passionate about. So, just kind of the underlying themes of how I approach development and coaching and learning and all of that, is, I would teach the 16-year-old me to think more, to ask more questions, and to just have a better understanding of where I was going. I knew if I asked 16-year-old me what I wanted, that was super clear. I just wanted to play baseball. Yeah. But why I wanted to do that, what I wanted to get out of that experience, and I think it's pretty common for 16-year-old kids especially to not want to look dumb, and that's why I always say, I would want my younger self to just ask more questions. I never wanted to look like I didn't know what I was doing, but turns out you still don't know what you're doing even if you don't ask the question. And then you still don't know the answer because you haven't asked the question. So any kind of self-development, any kind of clarity around where I was going, and then to really just lean on good coaches and lean on good influences and good people.
Nice, man. Super important. Awesome. Well, once again, I just want to thank you because I learned so much. I mean, like we talk all the time, and every time we talk, I still learn a ton, and I'm super interested, in all the things that you're up to. If you could tell people, I know you're working for Warstick right now, so if you want to talk about Warstick for a little bit, whatever you guys are up to, do that. Talk about your batting cage. Anyone in the Dallas area, I want you to go see Cam. Go talk to him. Like, he is super accessible. You can DM him. You can go visit him in person, and you can just learn so much. Yeah, give us some plugs. I want everyone to go follow you and keep learning from you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, thanks for making this happen. Without you building Plate Crate and making this as successful as it is, we don't get to have this conversation, and I don't get to connect with your audience, which is just super cool. And kind of my thought process of the underlying tone of a message today was to just try things, right? To ask questions, test things out, figure out if it works, figure out if it doesn't, ask why, all these things. And that does tie in a little bit to what you're doing, right? Like, you're sending out these curated boxes with these things that I've never seen before, and I get to try the goofy squish, the curb line, throwing these guys at the kids all week.
Those are so much fun.
Since I got some, and that is what it's about, is having fun and being curious and wanting to. I want kids to want to come in here because they have fun with me, right? And not only that, if you're having fun, you're going to pay attention, and then you're going to learn, and then I feel good because I taught you something, right? Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. But yeah, I'm also the senior fitting master over at Warstick. Pretty cool sounding title, but basically, I work with all of our MLB guys when they need help with adjusting bat models and things like that. But I more so focus on the youth side of helping kids and parents know that their kid has the right size bat to go into competition with. But really, the plug for Warstick is just to go to the website and check out the blog and read about what the company is about, because it's more than baseball. It's about teaching mindset. It's about developing in the game and outside the game, which makes it a awesome, I guess, job for me, is doing that. And then we've got the facility here in Arlington where we're renovating, but we're still, coaching and plugging away. And it's really just my lifelong passion and mission and goal to just positively impact as many people as we can. The Jackie Robinson quote is what sticks with me all the time, and it goes, "A life is not important except for the impact it has on other lives." So, why do I keep reading? Why do I keep training? Why do I keep asking questions? Because I keep learning new things all the time, and it's super fun and exciting for me to learn something new and then teach all my kids or friends or family that new thing. So now I got to go learn something else, and then hopefully every now and again, I get those messages, man, this really helped me out today. Hey, that was what I needed to hear. Hey, I didn't know that. Thanks for teaching me that. And that's what fills my cup. So absolutely, come see me if you can, if you're in the DFW area. If you're not, I love messaging on Instagram. I'm at Cameron Monger on every social media platform pretty much, but especially on Instagram. We still, Josh and I did a "What's in My Bag" video 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That I still get messages from probably a couple of times a year that say, "Hey, I saw you did this thing with Plate Crate. What are you doing now?" And to me, that's super cool. So if you get to listen, you got questions about, we got deep, but not all the way in there on some mental skills training stuff. But I could talk about this stuff all day. So anyone that wants to talk, you just got to buy me a cold brew.
Oh man, we didn't even get into coffee.
Coffee.
So I'll have to have you back on so we can get into coffee. We can get into other stuff. Cool, man.
Sweet.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for being on. we're gonna talk soon. And like I said, I want everyone to go follow Cam and just see what he's up to and just really take his advice to heart. It's such great advice, and he knows what he's talking about, and he's just a constant, constantly curious and constantly learning things. So once again, thanks for being on. This is a blast. We'll have to do it again.
Woo!